It's another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin. We're talking week 13 of college football.
Yeah, we've got a lot of names here, and we usually have a little bit of preamble. I'm just going to get right into it. You guys know what's coming. I'm running out of space on Ashton Jeanty's sash to put badges on. The guy's got so many. Why waste time bullshitting around when Ashton
Wine
Jeanty
and
can get another
dine
badge?
me a little bit, man.
He
Jesus.
just stands up next to the stage now like a serial killer because he knows he's going to get a badge every week. He had 20 carries, $169, a touchdown. Come on.
That's it?
Yeah, they didn't give him 32 carries this week, which was nice.
That it is nice to see, we don't need to do that against Wyoming. So, but yeah, he's over 2,000 yards now. I mean, we're just cooking right along. Absolutely historic season leading up to the NFL draft, in which he will be a very high draft selection. And that's what we are counting down the days till. But for now, we'll keep celebrating his weekly greatness. So why wouldn't we do that?
This is where I was going to go, is since we've had every conversation possible about Ashton Jeanty, I think he's been talked about 11 weeks or something like that. So we are looking at which team is going to draft Ashton Jeanty now. That's been the conversation. And where I wanted to go is the running back value question of, like, how high can running backs go? How much do running backs matter? You can get a running back late and blah, blah, blah. Okay. We just saw Saquon have 300-plus all-purpose yards. We see Derrick Henry putting together an incredible season with the Ravens. We saw Christian McCaffrey completely change the offense in San Francisco. We see these older running backs going to new teams, having a second life. And it brings the question of, like, number one, why did we think that wasn't going to work? Number two, like, is it just because they're on good teams and that's why it is? Or is it a marriage of the talent with the team? Because, like, you look at some of the bad teams that have drafted running back high and it usually doesn't go so hot. And you look at, like, Saquon, who had 2 really good years with the Giants, but was injury riddled the rest of the time there. It's like, is it just because the Giants stunk? Probably. I mean, you kind of get to see proof of concept now with the Eagles, but do we just need Ashton Jeanty to go to a good team that's ready to plug in a running back and good to go, maybe like Cincinnati, who was struggling this season? Or do we just want him to go high as possible to say, put up a middle finger to people who say running backs don't matter,
I mean, I think this is a very, you could zoom this thing out and you could have a very philosophical conversation about how do you balance the draft capital and the talent, which hopefully are married, and the situation, which is a yearly struggle for anybody playing Dynasty when you have players you really like in the draft and they end up going to a spot where you're like, oh man, like, that's kind of shady. And once in a while, it doesn't matter. Like, looking at you, Brock Bowers, it doesn't mean anything. But a lot of times it does matter. And it matters more than you want it to matter. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, the last just few years, like, on the wide receiver end of things, like a Drake London, where it's 2 years of just, like, you're not seeing a return on the investment. Other people, might be trying to get him off your hands maybe, and you might be tempted to sell low. But then it was like the second they even had a remotely interesting situation with a competent quarterback and a better coaching staff, bang, like, he's he proves his top 12 Dynasty wide receiver value. Neighbors this year, you could have the same conversation. The thing about running back that's interesting, though, is I think the situation is so much more important for a running back. And I think what you just talked through there with like Saquon ends up on the Eagles. He's 27 and he's having, the best year arguably of his career. I mean, you could go back to his rookie year and compare those two, but like what he's doing this year in this Eagles offense, I mean, it's just asinine. So I do think situation matters quite a bit. And we haven't seen running backs get drafted very highly in the draft over the last few years outside of Bijan and Gibbs. That was the changing of the trend. Like that until that point, it had been, like 20s, early second, and you had like players like Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris, where it's mixed results in those situations. And so
Josh Jacobs is another good example.
Yep. And there it is. I mean, he goes to a good offense, run first offense that is actually schemed up, and man, he is looking like a completely different player. I mean, he has the 1 year of being like the rushing leader in the NFL somehow. And then, but that was it. So, but yeah, so to answer your question in a more concise way, I believe it matters quite a bit. And it will be something that I am, cautiously keeping my eye on with a player like Jeanty.
Yeah, I'm really interested because I wanted Cincinnati to take a running back in the last draft, and like Chase Brown looks really good. So like maybe they just are out on drafting a running back altogether, which is fine. But like you get beyond that and you're looking at, Tampa at 15, Miami doesn't need a running back, Chicago at 12, but like, I don't know, Dallas at 11, which looked a little better last week than it has in a while. But it's just like if he goes where we want him to go, which is these, in the higher teens to like 10-ish range, it's like you might end up just in a bad spot, and then it's going to be ugly for a while. And I think Jeanty is also equipped to handle, a bad O-line, but like when it comes to value and long-term and all that, it's the big question of if he's in a bad spot, how much does it affect him, and how much does it affect running backs in general?
You're just trying to plant a little bit of, seed of doubt in all those 101 managers right now that are licking their chops. Like, I got 3 weeks to go until this becomes official
Vegas
for me.
Vegas takes him 3 overall, and it's like, oh, like he went 3 overall, but oh man.
Yeah. Well, we got a long ways to go, to a lot of months in between now and understanding that point in time. So we will talk much more about it. And as you can tell, we're already chomping at the bit to do that because we've done it for 3 straight weeks, I'm pretty sure. But that's where we are, man. That's where we are with Ashton Jeanty. There's really nothing else to say in terms of his college resume and the season he's having outside of the fact that it's, one of the best we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about another running back that we like quite a bit here at Camp Dynasty? And, having another good season, but this game, easily his best game of the year, a full passing game, running game. I mean, Devin Neal took over against Colorado this week. He is getting the till the wheels fall off badge because Kansas gave him a season high 37 carries. And that, I mean, previously up till this point, his highest carry total of the year was 27. So he surpasses that by 10. They just ran him over and over and over again. And 207 yards is what she ended up with, and 3 touchdowns on the ground, and also 4 catches for 80 yards and another touchdown. So 287 total yards, 4 total touchdowns for Devin Neal. I mean, incredible stuff this week, showing you the sort of Devin Neal-esque things, the elusiveness, getting into open spaces, making guys miss. He had 8 missed tackles forced in this game. That tied a season high for him. And he set the tone immediately with a screen pass that he took to the house on the first drive, made like 2 guys miss in the backfield, made a really nasty move on one of them, cut up field, and finished for a touchdown. So it was an awesome week for Devin Neal, a punctuation mark on not only, his season here, but also his college career, as we know he is headed to the NFL draft.
This is essentially like what we've been waiting for in the Devin Neal era of Camp Dynasty, which has been the last 2 years of like, I love Devin Neal. I think Devin Neal has grown on you as a player. I know you haven't disliked him, but like, we're finally witnessing like the full slate of Devin Neal. Cause like you said, his previous career high in carries was 27. It's like you get 10 more than that in this game, and you get the fruits of those labors. You get the 207 on the ground, the 3 touchdowns, and the passing work. You give him a good scheme of passing game, and it bears right here with this 80 yards, like the screen game that you mentioned, where we're getting the ball in his hands, getting him out in space, getting blockers in front of him, letting him do what he does best. I just think like this is what he'll be in the NFL, not a 37 carry guy, but when it comes to the receiving work, just get him in space, let him go, let him be your, maybe the lightning to your thunder in your duo, whatever. But I really like how like they finally played spoiler to Colorado also, which was pretty sick. But it was just like we're finally seeing this receiving game fully unleashed in the second half of this season, where he's gotten at least 3 targets in every single game, and he gets 4 here and turns into a lot.
You hating on Dion?
I'm not hating on Dion. Okay. I didn't say it was a good thing that they upset him, but it's cool to see your guys succeed,
I get it. I mean, I might have been hating on Dion a little bit. So, I mean, we can keep talking about this.
I was going to say, you can hate on Dion right here, but you can't really hate on Travis Hunter because he's getting the 2-way badge as he does pretty often here. Had 8 catches on 9 targets for $125, 2 touchdowns. Did everything he possibly could in this game to keep Colorado in it. Obviously, didn't end up working out for them. But the reason I wanted to bring him up and the reason I'm giving him the 2-way badge is because he said he's playing 2 ways in the NFL. And that's been something that's been a hot button thing here. And I mean, in a lot of places, honestly. Where is Travis Hunter going to play in the NFL? Is he going to be a package player on offense or defense? Is he going to be a full-time player on both? Is he going to play one or the other? And it sounds like he's planting his flag that he's going to end up doing both. And another thing that we've talked about is like, if he ends up getting defensive back eligibility on your app of choice for your IDP leagues, like how high can you draft him? And is it number 3 overall? Because I mean, if you can get a guy that's playing full time and he's putting together, he's got 1,036 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. He's doing like, if he's a wide receiver 1 on an offense and you can slot him in your DB, like that's a cheat code.
I mean, I think like he could go 3rd overall just purely based on playing wide receiver. Like, I think that is certainly a possibility, especially when you consider where his name kind of is right now in terms of the NFL draft world. A lot of belief that he could be the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft, but probably a floor of top 5. So even if he's only, playing wide receiver, I feel like it's pretty easy to talk yourself into the talent and what you've seen from him, especially this year. I mean, this was his 600-yard receiving game of the season, over 1,000 yards now. I mean, it's been an awesome season to see him grow as a wide receiver. The question really does become, if he is a two-way player, as he's saying that he wants to be, does he go number one? I mean, is there a world in which he unseats the featured star running back of a class by having the possibility of being a starting wide receiver in your DB spot if you're playing in an IDP league like we do? So that is going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and if he's like doing the full slate of offense and defense, it's like the floor is so high, where you talk about, even if he's like a cover corner that's getting like, 2-3 solo tackles and a pass deflection, it's like, cool, there's a free, 7 points. And then on top of the potential of like 15, 20, 25 points as a receiver, it's like, just, it adds up pretty quick. And then another part of it is like the Taysom Hill kind of thing, where if maybe he's just kind of sprinkled in on offense, he's going to get sprinkled in packages where he's going to be used. Because that's the whole thing with, like, you throw Taysom Hill in at tight end. Like, he's not really a tight end. He's a quarterback, a tight end, a running back. But, like, every time he's on the field, he's making an impact. And it's like, even if he's a full-time corner that comes in on offense, he's coming in for a reason.
Well, and that also begs a different question then, too. Like, if he is a corner who's playing wide receiver in a sub-package sort of a role, not a full-time role, where does he go in an IDP draft? Because you still think he's going to go pretty high. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember like way back in the day, like maybe the first year that I played Dynasty was when Patrick Peterson was like just getting in on like a very small amount of offensive situations.
Jet sweeps and stuff like that. Yeah.
And like he had weeks where he was like putting up offensive numbers, and it was a huge difference maker in the DB spot. You have a player like this, who's a literal wide receiver prospect. I mean, the possibilities seem endless with that. Yeah. So either way, he's going to be one of the most valuable pieces in the upcoming rookie drafts, but still figuring out exactly what that looks like.
And then the last piece of the puzzle for people who do not play in IDP leagues, if Travis Hunter is a corner playing in sub receiver packages, what do you do with them? Because then it's like, man, I don't know if I want to take the risk of like Travis Hunter only playing, 20 offensive snaps a game.
No.
But in those 20 snaps, he could very well be like the feature of the offense. So like there's the give and the take of, if you're not in an IDP league. And the biggest problem, we won't know any of this at draft day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping, because of the notoriety of the player and where he is likely to be selected in the NFL draft, I would hope there is plenty of like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter stuff that's like pretty clear around draft day or quickly after draft day. That's like, this is what's going to happen, or like, this is what the team envisions with Travis Hunter. Because if we don't have firm answers heading into a rookie draft, it is the ultimate gamble, the ultimate, like, you want to open the mystery box, or do you want to just pick a player that is going to be playing the way they're going to play?
Right. So that's the fun of Travis Hunter.
It is a lot of fun.
It is.
Nothing ever like it before seen since I've been playing Dynasty. So
if you like gambling.
And a lot of people do these days.
Damn right.
But how about a player that maybe feels a little bit more like a gamble than he did at the start of the year, but having a great week this week? That is Luther Burden III. Getting a badge at Camp Dynasty. It has not gone the way that you and I envisioned this season. We expected him to be a decorated badge winner, I think, here at Camp Dynasty, even with, I came into the year with some question marks about his game from 2023, but even then, those were fairly mild compared to the highlights that he put out, the parts of his game that really exploded off the screen last year. And we haven't really gotten to see much of that this year, which has been pretty unfortunate. But this week against Mississippi State, he had 7 catches on 8 targets for 91 yards and a touchdown. That's the most catches, yards, and most yak. We know this is Luther Burden after all. All 3 of those, most he's had this year since week 3. So this was his second best statistical performance of the season. And it was highlighted by 2 kind of classic Burden plays. You have the touchdown, which is a deep shot in the end zone in which he adjusts to coverage, locates the ball, and comes down with it. That's something that we've seen on film from him in the past as well. We know he has that ball tracking prowess deep down the field. And then, of course, a signature Luther Burden yak play in this game where he catches it over the middle and just goes like 1v11 and basically makes the entire defense miss at some point on that play. So it was truly, not a, 91 yards. It's not exploding off the screen. But when you watch how he got to this point, it was a pretty good week for Luther Burden.
Yeah, Luther has had maybe a lackluster season, you could say, where it hasn't been super sexy, and at times it's been a little bit disappointing. But in games like this, when it all gets put together, it reminds you of why why we talked about him so highly before the season. And it's like the run after catch ability is so good. And whether you can live off that or not is another story, but it's like the 1v11 play you're talking about. It's like you catch a curl at the 50 and you have 5 players in front of you and you end up getting, another 15 yards. And it's like, man, this is pretty special. And then, like you said, the adjustment on that touchdown where he's like hand fighting with this guy all the way down the field and then goes back hip and drops into the end zone. It's like, all right, this is the special stuff that Luther Burden can do. But pretty clearly it's like he's getting at least 6 targets a game and he's just not churning this out consistently. So how much concern does that bring up, and how much of it is quarterback play? How much of it is play calling? And that stuff is all to be dug into probably at a later time, because unfortunately I can't deep dive into every Mizzou play every week, sadly.
That's why we are going to deeply dive wide receivers in not that far from now either. So this is one of the most interesting players for me when it comes to diving into the year of film to see how did we get here. I think it does have a lot to do with this Missouri offense, which has taken a significant step back from a year ago. But I do want to see how he was used this year, if it was similar, different than last year, because I, was hoping to see some more route variety from him this year, see him, kind of running some more routes rather than just get the ball in my hands type of plays. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we got here. But this was a nice sign of life for a player that I still think is probably going to end up near the top of this class.
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right. How about another wide receiver that is kind of catching on here at Camp Dynasty over the last few weeks?
We got Jayden Higgins. He's back, the Iowa State receiver. He is getting the slant boy badge. That's not derogatory. He ran a nice slant route to score a touchdown in this game. And it's just like, man, this is like just a fun player that gets open, makes himself available, is a strong just catcher of the football. Like, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Jayden Higgins, and he had another impressive week. He had 9 catches on 13 targets for $155 and a touchdown against Utah. This was his highest total on the season in terms of receiving yards. This was his second highest total in targets. So they're featuring him heavily. They're like, man, this offense works when we get number 9 the ball, and it was working in this game, and he's a big reason for it.
I hate to say it, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is the exact type of receiver that just every year there's one of them, and I can't ignore when I see players that are this size doing what Jayden Higgins can do on a football field. And it goes one of two ways. I mean, it's gone very well and it's gone very poorly. And it's because these bigger bodied receivers, I mean, I think he separates pretty well. I mean, I've been on an arc with him from that first time we talked about him to now. And like every time I watch him, it just feels like the slant route that you referenced. It's just like for a player of his size to be able to run, snappy routes like that. And obviously his nose for the end zone this season has been very significant as well with 8 touchdowns. But I mean, he's kind of got the whole package in terms of the catch point stuff. The hands have been excellent. Only 2 drops this year. That's 2.5%. And contested catches, 9 of 16. I mean, he really is that archetype, the big physical body wide receiver that is great at the catch point. And those are the kind of players that for my entire life have just cast the spell over me. So I'm very excited to follow Jayden Higgins through the next few months and see where he lands.
Yeah, and he didn't get 155 yards off of short passes like it might seem. He had 2 like 40-plus yard catches where he was just running on the boundary. One was just a straight 9 route and kind of laid out for it. It was thrown inside where he worked through the DB and got the catch. And then the other one, he had like I think it was just another fly, but this DB was playing like inside leverage. He gave him a little move to the inside, turned the DB around, and then had like 4 yards of separation. If this quarterback leads him, he's walking in for a 70-yard touchdown. So could have had another one, could have had a 200-yard game, 2 touchdowns, could have, would have, should have. Regardless, had a pretty solid one here.
All right, let's talk about an IDP. We're getting them on the show the last few weeks, and it feels good, and it feels very good to get our next player on, and that would be James Pearce Jr., our consensus number 1 IDP heading into this season. It's been a little bit of a weird road for him. There's been some haters that have come along the way. He had a bit of a slower start this year. We talked about it, but over the last month and a half, honestly 2 months, he's just been a dominant force once again. And this week, he got a little bit of a, served up on a silver platter game with UTEP. And what do you want to see guys like this do to UTEP? You want to see him be basically unblockable. And that's what it was. He had 4 pressures, 2 sacks in this game. His pass rush win rate in this game was 28.6%. And that is a very high number. Anything over 20, like if you're getting over 20, you're doing pretty damn good. If you're getting over 25, it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're superhuman.
Yeah.
So it was his highest. We talk about PFF grades a little bit more with defensive players because it helps to contextualize numbers that aren't necessarily on a stat sheet. This was his highest graded performance by them of the year with an 89 grade. And he, for the, mentioned the 28% in this game, for the season, sitting at 22.3% win rate as a pass rusher. That is 6th among players with at least 100 rush snaps. So he has had the year that we were hoping to see. The sack number isn't quite as high, and that's maybe why there's been some, extra noise about him, but everything else shows you that he has had another phenomenal year.
So, do your due diligence. Looked up James Pearce week 13. First thing to pop up, every missed hold on James Pearce in SEC play 2024. How long do you think the video is?
5 minutes.
8.
Oh my God.
I was watching it. Not wrong. Like these are all missed calls. But it does go slow-mo, and he's getting held a lot. But the reason he's getting held a lot is because of that pass rush win rate, because of what he is doing on the edge. I was a little bit like, man, what's going on with James Pearce? And then you actually watch Tennessee, and it's like, all right, yeah, 27's still doing the thing where he's pretty much unblockable. It's just they are 100% game planning around this player to make sure that he doesn't wreck the game. And that is the ultimate respect you can pay to a defensive player. It's like, we know that you can mess it up. I think LaFleur said this before they played the Niners. He's like, man, if Nick Bosa plays, there's just certain plays you can't run. It's like, that's the type of player that James Pearce is in college football, where it's like, there's just certain things you can't do against a guy like this. And I think that, he'll still be right where we thought he would be in the summer come draft time, because these guys will watch tape and be like, man, I'd love to have that guy on my team.
Oh yeah. There's been some nice edge players this year, some risers. I think a guy like Abdul Carter has definitely solidified himself, but man, I don't know. James Pearce, I remember what we watched last year, man, and that was special stuff. So anything close to that, and I'll still be all aboard.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right. Let's talk about another. We're playing the hits, man.
We're playing the hits. Week 13, the guys. This is Kaleb Johnson is back. The Iowa running back. He had another huge game. He's getting the tote that thing badge. Another one that we can dust off because we've given it out before. Had 35 carries in this game, 164 yards, 1 touchdown against Maryland. I mean, what has Kaleb Johnson done but risen his draft stock over this season? We talked about it a little bit last week when we talked about Luke Lachey as this Iowa offense has been so good. It's weird that Lachey hasn't been more involved. And then you look more into it and it's like, oh, none of these pass catchers are involved because they just don't throw it very much. And then, you look at the Kaleb Johnson numbers and it's like, this is the reason Iowa's offense has looked good this year. And this was another version of that story where he is getting the ball early and often. He's punching it in from short yardage. He's getting 12 when he probably should have gotten 4. He's catching some passes. This player has, flown up my board where it's like, I was a little skeptical of him earlier in the season, but put it all together for a full season, it's like I got nothing else to say because week after week you've impressed me.
Another player that I'm just chomping at the bit to dive into his tape because we've talked about him a lot. I've watched a lot of Kaleb Johnson, just preparing for our weekly episodes. Sitting down, watching every single snap, what does this thing look like? Because, we've talked about, he was already on our midseason show. We didn't even need to, deep dive film to know that he is coming in this class. And it's because of performances like this. And I mean, in a similar fashion to Devin Neal, I mean,
Yeah.
35 carries, easily a season high for him. They rode him all the way against Maryland. But yeah, another awesome week in terms of power, 113 yards after contact, 6 missed tackles forced. I mean, just such a complete runner in this class. So, yeah, like I said, super excited to dive in and find out where he's going to slot in.
I wish, and I understand this is a function of the offense, but I wish he got more opportunities in the pass game, because like he seems like he has nice hands. And so it's like, how can we throw the ball to this guy more? And that's not going to happen while he's wearing black and yellow. And we'll see about, what that looks like in the NFL.
Yeah, I could see him being one of those guys that gets labeled as a, pure runner, like
Yes.
not a complete, every down sort of a player. I am with you that I think the bits that we get this year on 20 catches, I mean, he looks very comfortable in that sort of a role. So it's something that I think he can definitely expand upon at the next level. It doesn't seem to be a hindrance of his game, but yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
All right. So we're playing the hits. We're talking about the guys, but hold on a second, because there is a player that we have not talked about all year that is going to come up here in week 13 for the very first time. And that is Illinois' wide receiver, Pat Bryant. Even now, with only a couple weeks left of collecting names and seeing what's going on in 2024, even now, guys continue to kind of come out of the woodwork. And I had to give Pat Bryant a badge this week for more than one reason, honestly. He is getting the hero badge. We'll get to that in a second. First of all, 7 catches on 12 targets for 197 yards and a touchdown against Rutgers this week. He's had a great year. This is a senior wide receiver, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's had a great year, career year, a player that I think we're going to get to see in Mobile, or at least in one of the postseason circuits. So I'm excited about that, because he's up to 914 yards, 9 touchdowns this year. It's been a great year. This game, season bests in terms of yards, highest targets he's had. And a lot of that had to do with what was happening in the second half of this game, where they just started feeding him over and over again. And every time the ball was in his hands, it seemed like he was making a big play. He had 136 yards after the catch in this game. I mean, for a big dude, 6'3", 200 pounds, he was moving well. He was getting away from tacklers. He was burning guys. I mean, he looked really impressive in this game. And then he gets the hero badge because of what happened at the very end of this game, where he has a false start on 3rd down, and it pushes Illinois back. So their eventual field goal on 4th down ends up being a little bit further back because of Pat Bryant's false start. So he was pretty animated on the sideline. Like, man, I just blew this game for us, because like this is a deep kick. And the kick goes off and it's nowhere close. But hold on a second, because Greg Schiano, Rutgers head coach, calls a timeout before the kick. And Brett Bielema, seeing that the kick has no chance from this distance, is like, whatever, it's 4th and 19 or whatever, but I guess we got to go for it. I mean, game's on the line and we're not making this kick. And who else but Pat Bryant catching a dig over the middle with 4 or 5 defenders in front of him in the end zone, and he finishes the play, gets into the end zone, game-winning touchdown. So I mean, just an exceptional week of situationally and then just statistically. What a week for Pat Bryant, and a player that, I'm pretty excited. I think he'll be in Mobile, and I think there's going to be a lot of fun senior wide receivers there. But after what I saw from him this week, I think he could be one of the better ones.
I know that college kicking has gotten better, but like, why are we doing a 57-yarder? Like, a lot of NFL kickers are not making a 57-yarder. It's 4th and 13. Like, you got 14 seconds left. First of all, we have no timeouts left. Why are we running a dig route? That's another question that I have, because like, if 24 on this play takes like a reasonable angle, he gets this tackle. But Pat Bryant makes him miss and ends up scoring. But for like a debacle from Rutgers defense to allow that to happen, terrible decisions all around. But it ends up spotlighting a player that has had a very good season and like has some really interesting intangibles that would like can be really good for a wide receiver. I'd love to see him convert more targets into catches, because you look at like 70% of his targets end up as catches. You saw it in this game as 7 for 12. It's like, I need you to get the ball in your hands a little more. It's not like a drop rate issue, but if you're open enough, it's those catches end up, or those targets end up being catches more often than not. But also, it's like, it's Illinois' quarterback. What are you going to do? So, you take the good with the bad and see what comes of it. But this guy's got great size. He's got great speed. He can do it after the catch. And I don't mind the separation. So it's all packaged into a nice little game winner where you can digest it all in one play. And it's like, okay, I can see kind of what this guy can do.
Yeah, I think this wide receiver class is like, it's very good at the top. I love the guys we have at the top. The intrigue with Travis Hunter, as well as, obviously Tedero McMillan, and then even Luther Burden still in there. There's like this weird middle area that I feel like is maybe missing some guys. But then you have, I feel like, a very expansive, deep range. And because a lot of these guys are seniors. A lot of these guys are having their best, college seasons as seniors. So I think what I'm looking forward to quite a bit about getting into the postseason process here, and specifically the Senior Bowl, is seeing some of these wide receivers stacked up with each other, seeing how they look together on a field, because I really feel like this is the kind of year where you could have some serious, depth guys kind of rise a little bit. I mean, we talked about a guy like Jalen Royals earlier in the year, kind of softly floating the name Jaden Reed out there. And I think that's the kind of year we could see with guys like him, like Bryant, Jalen Noel, the other Iowa State guy. I mean, I feel like there's a handful of these guys that we've talked about through the year that could make some noise. And I think at least one or two of them could, raise their stock quite a bit in that sort of an environment. So is that it?
I think that's it.
Damn. Week 13, which means there's only 1 week of badges left. That's
Unbelievable.
That's insane. How did that happen?
I would say it flew by, but this year it didn't feel like it flew by, actually. I would have been so ready to get on to draft season that it feels like it. Usually it's like you're caught up in the college football of it all, and then it's like, oh, it flew by. This time I was like, man, I can't wait to draft these guys because we've been talking about them for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, man. Some of them, yeah, it's been 2 years and we're ready. But the fun part about this is even after we're done with badges and the weekly, grind, college football kind of more exciting than it's been in a long time. And with the 12-team playoff, even more so. So, our college football season will end, but we're still going to get to watch these guys and more of these guys than ever on the biggest stage of college football. So that's fun.
That'll always be fun because the myth making that happens around these players happens during the playoff. And, the 12 team just brings in more opportunity for these guys to become heroes of programs and maybe rise stock that way while all eyes are on them.
I like that a lot. I'm excited. I'm very excited now. You sold me with your myth making comment.
Thank you.
All right, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows here at Camp Dynasty. And for one player, it has been an absolute roller coaster ride of a season. And we have to go back to the phones and make another call. So let's do that. It's time for the call home. This quarterback class has been on the receiving.
Calling home the whole class.
Yeah, like we don't give any badges to quarterbacks. They only get calls home at this point. And a player like this has gotten several badges this year, but he's also gotten several calls home. And that's Jalen Milroe, the enigma, the question mark of this quarterback class. I mean, we just sung his praises again not that long ago, a couple weeks ago, after giving him a call home not too far before that. So we're back. This was an abysmal performance for Milroe. Alabama gets blown out by Oklahoma. Milroe had he was 11 for 26. Yikes. 164 yards, 3 interceptions. Didn't get anything going on the ground either. Believe he only had 12 yards rushing in this game on 15 attempts. So a horrible performance after he had just strung together a couple of nice ones. One of them, yes, it's against Mercer, but the LSU game that we gave him a badge for when he had like 200 yards rushing, I don't know what to make of all this. It has been truly a roller coaster ride with Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, there are throws that Jalen Milroe makes. He had a 3rd and 16 in the first quarter in this game where he throws an absolute rope over a linebacker before a safety can get there, up the seam. And it's like, hell yeah. We are here, Jalen Milroe time. And then he goes on to put together one of the most baffling quarterback performances that I've seen, where he's just struggling time and time again. It's like, I really I have no idea what this player is. And it seems like it's becoming clear, and a lot of people will have said I thought this the whole time. Jalen Milroe just doesn't quite look like an NFL ready product. And when you give him this much time in different scheme changes, it's maybe we just need to call a spade and say, yeah, Milroe's not quite where we want him to be. Now, that being said, as a dynasty player, all eyes will be on the draft for Jalen Milroe and what the NFL thinks of this player, because I can have my thoughts about him like I did Jayden Daniels, where I was I don't know about Jayden Daniels, but then Jayden Daniels goes number 2 overall. It's well, yeah, you have to take him in your super flex drafts because he's going to play. And Milroe, while he may throw a screen pass to a defender, he also can run for 200 yards in a game. And if a team drafts him top 5, say the Raiders, and he's going to have a shot to play starting week 1, it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson, where hey, this isn't a finished product, but he's a threat to score 2 touchdowns on the ground every game. So draft him on your fantasy teams and see what happens. So while the passing looks concerning and throws come out late and whatever, a team might say I can fix him. And then it's well, now we're looking at a guy that is a dynasty asset. How long is he a dynasty asset? And how effective is he really? That's another question.
I think I'm just out on this entire quarterback class.
Fade quarterback.
Like, I had so much hope.
This happened. It was Brock Purdy. I think he was the only good quarterback in the class.
Yeah, who is the one? Who's the day 3 guy that's gonna become
Brock?
Cade Klubnik. That's
there. Shout out Darius.
But I had a lot of faith in Milroe. I mean, I thought I was, I was higher on him coming into this year than I think many people were, just because you see bits and pieces and you want to believe that bits and pieces can become a full picture. But the problem is that this year has been all but the same. I mean, it's been bits and pieces. Georgia, man, he's here. Quarterback 1, don't look back. And then it's, the Tennessee game where it goes just absolutely off the rails. And then weeks like this where it's, more of that. So it's really hard. It's really hard to keep, making excuses, and especially with a player like Richardson where that's still kind of living in your mind freshly. And honestly, the entire state of quarterback in the NFL and the short leashes and the even things like Bryce Young, like weird, like ownership getting involved stuff, like get him off the field. And it's just, it's a tough time to be a developmental quarterback, I think, in the league. So
yes. I think that's really the biggest issue at hand, is we're in an era where you have a short leash. And I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, where quarterbacks are going to be given more time, because everybody's job seems like the stopwatch starts when you draft a quarterback. And I think you're seeing it a little bit in New England, where they thought they were going to give Drake May time, but it was like, man, Jacoby stinks. And they're like, get Drake in there. And Drake plays well, but they lose games. It's like, Gerard Mayo, not doing it. And like, get rid of Gerard Mayo. It's like, guys, we got to let these things breathe a little bit. So I think you're absolutely right. Where like, even if Milroe gets drafted to, one of these teams that's sitting, Vegas or the Jets, Cleveland, like you're looking at these teams in the top 10, New Orleans, where maybe like Cleveland, New Orleans, he has a chance to sit for a little bit. But like if he goes to Vegas or the Giants, it's like he's going to get thrown into a tire fire and asked to save this team. And I just don't see that as feasible.
Certainly not in the state that he is today.
Yeah.
And so we will see, and we will know even more about what we think about all this in just a few weeks when we talk about quarterbacks and dive into the film on players like Jalen, Milroe, and the rest of this crew that has been pretty underwhelming, I think, all things considered, across the board. Even some of the top names, even guys like, Shadur, who might be just backing himself into being quarterback 1 at this point, but with the baggage.
Let's get Jalen Milroe on the Rams and see what happens.
Hey, I'd like to see what Sean McVay could do with Jalen Milroe.
Have 2 years to just like mold him into whatever he wants him to be. I'm in.
I mean, worst case scenario, just turn him into Taysom Hill.
That's what I'm saying. You just turn him into Terrell Pryor.
Like, yeah. Hey, there's a name. All right. Well, that is the call home, but luckily we don't end on bad news at Camp Dynasty. So let's gather around the fire, because it's time for All Grown Up. Speaking of quarterbacks, Kaleb, I told myself I wasn't going to do that this week, and then
So you had the worst KCC I've ever heard.
Yes.
We did that before the episode. I just opened it up. I got maybe the best one yet. I got Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Malik Neighbors.
Oh,
That's a tough one.
oh my God, man.
Yeah. These are some heavy hitters. Half PPR. Super flex off. Now, it doesn't matter here, no quarterbacks, but you have to keep Chase.
I think you have to keep Chase.
And I think you trade Bijan.
That's where I'm at.
Man.
That's yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think that where are we? Like 10 weeks ago, Malik Neighbors, like you might be sitting here saying we have to keep him.
Yeah.
Like that's how crazy of a ride this rookie year has been for Neighbors. And why, we talked about this a little bit. I was panicking a little bit more than you were at that time of like, man, he's already the Dynasty wide receiver 1. And then,
right.
we find it, water finds its level, and he's just a very good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like
Thank
that.
you. But, okay. Kaleb Williams.
Kaleb.
We talked about this a little bit last week. Said if he has another good one, come back and talk about him. And he had another pretty good one. Mm-hmm. And he also had one of the most Kaleb Williams throws that I've ever seen.
I mean,
I'm just like defying the laws of physics, it seemed like. Just rolling out, dropping it in the bucket, in between defenders. I mean, he's so good. But also so, like, there were definitely Kaleb Williams plays in this game where you were like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Taking that big sack in overtime.
It's the gift and the curse of Kaleb Williams, where it's like you get the play on 4th down where he scrambles, hurdles a defender that's on the ground in the pocket, and then sprints out for the 1st down. You get that play, but you also have to take the loss of 14 in overtime to set up the punt to give the ball back to the Vikings. It's like, I will take that every single time, obviously, but it's also the frustrations of, like, this guy is such a playmaker, such a competitor, that, like, I want to make every single play, every single down. Like, I can't take the loss of 6, or I don't want to throw this away. I want to get outside of the pocket and make something happen out of structure, and that's what makes him so special, like you said, with the pass to DeAndre Swift, and then he also had the touchdown to Keenan Allen where he rolled out and got into a little scramble drill action. It's like, this is what makes Kaleb Williams. And then he had there were a couple throws where I'm like, holy shit, he's back. Like, there were a lot of times where the confidence seemed to be lacking with Williams, and it seemed like he was thinking so much about, like, what do I have to do? How do I have to do it? Who are my reads? What's the progression on this play? It seems like he's playing so much freer now, and he's just letting it rip, where he threw a corner route between, like, 3 guys, and you could, like, almost hear it whistling, where he got it out so hot. And he threw a dig route to Odunze, and, like, the safety was bearing down on it, and it's like, just can't get there in time because he put so much heat on it. And these are clutch throws, big-time throws on 3rd down, 3rd and long in the 4th quarter and overtime, where you gotta have it. And he's proven to be like he has like the clutch gene, but sometimes, you lapse a little bit when you take that sack because you're, a little bit of a heat check. After last week against Green Bay, he puts together what should have been the game-winning drive if they make that field goal. And then this week, it's like he puts together a masterclass drive to tie the game with that throw to, like, DJ Moore, and he gets up and spikes the ball and everybody's celebrating. It's like, he has that clutch gene. The Bears seem like they got their guy. It's just the consistency down to down, and then game to game needs to come together.
Well, and also, I mean, the OC change has correlated directly with Williams having 2 of his best, if not his 2 best games as a rookie. So that was, in fact, a limiter for him. And let's hope Shane Waldron never touches an NFL sideline, at least in an important capacity ever again.
He can be a consultant.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, we haven't played this game yet this year. So I want to ask you, would you trade this player straight up for Caleb Williams?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes.
No.
No? Okay. Jordan Love?
No.
Kyler Murray?
Yeah.
Justin Herbert?
No.
Those are the 3 quarterbacks currently above him on KTC and 1 below him. Herbert is 1 spot below him. Kyler is 1 spot ahead of him.
That's wild.
But I don't. Yeah, and the way this thing changes, man, I'm sure Caleb's going to be like quarterback 5 by next week. So
I mean, that's how it goes on KTC.
Yeah,
unluckily for us using it as like a
trying to use it as a scientific tool.
Yeah, and it's just like people going through being like, get this off my screen, you know?
Yeah.
Like trying to get to whatever they're looking at. But yeah, it's just like when you see it all come together in a game like that, and it would have been nice for them to win, but as an individual performance, it's always really nice to see a guy, you know, put together something like that after you're like, man, I think this offensive coordinator is really limiting him. And then, like, they fire him, and immediately it's like, oh, yeah, he was. Like, yeah. It's bad. So, yeah, it is nice to see him doing his thing.
Who else this week?
So I want to talk about Jonathan Brooks a little bit. This isn't a performance indication, but he played his first NFL game. He had 2 carries. Wasn't much. They're obviously easing him back in. We talked about him last week where we're like, man, we haven't – this will go hand in hand with another player. But we haven't moved Jonathan Brooks at all, even though he hasn't played at all, and usually KTC is super reactive to this kind of thing. And everybody's just like, yeah, he's insulated at his value. Well, Bucky Irving finally moved ahead of him after a huge week this week where he was the RB2 on the day. And it's like, okay, so that's what it takes for a guy to move ahead of him, where Bucky Irving has been slowly taking more and more of Rachaad White and Sean Tucker's carries, whatever. It's like he's become the lead back in Tampa Bay. And he's shown it week in and week out. That's what it takes for a 5th-round guy to overtake a 2nd-rounder who hasn't played a snap. Like, that's kind of what you're looking at with Dynasty as a whole. And, like, how can you find an edge in Dynasty? It's to try to exploit that, maybe. But also you got to have in the back of your mind, oh, Bucky Irving can get replaced tomorrow because he's just a 5th-round pick.
Yeah, this is the kind of scenario that it's very perplexing, and you can take a risk. I mean, we talked a little bit about this last week with the running backs kind of making some noise, guys like Trey Benson getting a little more involved, and it's like, then you see a guy like Irving that's sitting up here as like the rookie RB2 behind Brooks, and like, is that warranted? Is that like, why is that happening? And I mean, we both like Bucky a lot. I mean, I honestly like had him too low. Like, I knocked again. We're back to situation. It's like knocked him for the situation because he's paired with Rachaad White, who proved that he, you know, could handle it last year. One of the top fantasy running backs last year. But Irving comes in, basically takes his job, and it's still very much a committee situation. And even Sean Tucker getting involved now this year. Mm-hmm. But like to see what Bucky has been able to do this year, and to kind of, you know, even accelerate kind of what he's been able to do. I mean, this week was just absolutely huge, and getting involved, you know, in the pass game. Like, it begs the question of how long, like where is that fine line of right. Like, let's hang on to our pre-draft, you know, ideas, and let's not react to the things directly in front of us. And then a player is showing you who he is on an NFL football field, at what point do you start to just accept it, and where is that balancing point where, I'm not trading Jonathan Brooks straight up for Bucky Irving today.
Right.
Like, that's absolutely not happening. But, I think Irving is the kind of player that, by the end of this year is going to carry some legitimate value, I think, heading into next year.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely interesting where it's like, what picks would you trade for him? What players would you trade for him? Is like, would you trade a second for Bucky Irving? I feel like we're at the point where, yeah, I feel comfortable doing that. It's like, would you pay a first for Bucky Irving? It's like, okay, that's where I start to feel a little like, I don't know if I want to part with that for a guy who doesn't have like immense job security. And I think that's where this, Jonathan Brooks staying as high as he is, even though we haven't seen him play and he's on a bad team, it's like, yeah, but he's a second round pick, so he's probably safe. And it's like, even with Chuba Hubbard getting an extension, like, we still feel this good about him. So that's what I'm curious about, is like, they clearly, like, Chuba's been excellent this year in a bad situation. It's like, but we're still holding firm on Brooks. And it's just weird how there's some players that will fall off the face of the earth when they get hurt or when, you don't see the production you want. And there's some players where it's like, I had diamond hands, I'm holding no matter what.
What a fun game.
like Jalen Coker.
Yeah.
Like, he had one game. Like, and he climbed 20 spots in the rookie rankings on KTC. Like, what's happening? I don't know.
I have no idea. Like, I'm looking at this. Coker is the 33rd ranked rookie, Dynasty wide receiver 70, already moving ahead of Jermaine Burton.
Yep.
Which
Luke McCaffrey. Like,
Luke McCaffrey, everybody's favorite.
Malachi Corley.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, it's Devon Bailey. There's another name.
Javon Baker. My misses.
Where's Jalen Polk these days? He might be below every one of these
Keep
names.
scrolling down, yeah.
We're going to talk about ultimate reaction meeting. Like, okay, yeah, maybe that was a little warranted. But
oh, there he
I
is.
literally
he's 31.
don't. Okay,
he's
30.
two above Coker.
Oh, he's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Is that
good.
it?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
We have, there's some name. Jalen Wright's been getting more involved in Miami. That's been fun. Somebody that we didn't talk about a lot. A.D. Mitchell has been seeing a few more snaps, a few more opportunities, but can't get much in Indianapolis, which I think is strange because it feels like every time he's on the field, he does something good. Troy Franklin was the other one where I was like, hey, he seems awfully involved when he's on the field. And maybe it's just because him and Bo Nix are friends, but that's kind of nice.
That Broncos wide receiver group is just such an enigma.
Loaded.
I mean,
oh yeah,
Marvin Mims is getting targets again, so
God is good.
But yeah, we got one more all grown up next week too. This has been a kind of an interesting year because I think we've seen, some of the highest highs with Neighbors early season and then Bauer's year as a whole. We've also seen a lot of weird stuff. A lot of weird running back movement happening. And that was, maybe not entirely unexpected given that we knew this was a weaker class. Even at the top end, even guys like Brooks Benson, they're not established, high-end sort of running back prospects. So, it created a scenario where some of these guys could rise. But I think it'll be very interesting to sit down and break it all down again when we do our redraft. I think this has been kind of a weird year to try to follow the value spikes because they've been so intense in both directions for certain players. So it'll be a fun redraft this year, and we'll get to really kind of dial in at that point and review the rookie seasons, talk about value, talk about, who should you be looking at as a potential, like a real buy, not just
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk about like who we feel like we were wrong on, and like who we want to plant a flag on and be like, no, I wasn't wrong. It's just this and that, and give a bunch of excuses to why your takes are bad. I think that's always fun. But come to that episode and it's like, we don't just say, yeah, no, we're right about these guys. We'll say we're wrong, and that we're okay with that.
I love being wrong, because being wrong just means you get to be better next year. And That's right. Just sounded like a fucking, a Hallmark movie when I said that. But it's
like a bad coach.
Yeah. But I believe that, and I do it. I've learned just the last 3 years that we've been doing this a lot about what to do, what not to do, what to look for. Maybe
there's no such thing as losing, only learning.
Amen. All right. That is week 12 in the NFL and week 13 of college football. One more week of college football to go for Camp Dynasty, and then we will get to do our second Dynasty rookie draft of the year. But this one is the first real one, because it's informed by the final season of our campers here. So that's always a fun episode. We might even try to get a guest on, as we've done a couple times in the past. So I'm looking forward to that. But let's not get too far ahead, because one more week, Colin, for our guys, 2025 campers, baby.
I just hope they all come out.
Right.
The NFL draft.
Yeah.
Just don't go back to school.
There's so many guys this year that I'm like, you could go back. Like we haven't talked about Dylan Sampson since like week 5. And I feel like it's because we both kind of have this lingering thought, like he might go back, but he never really stopped this year. So no, I'm like, maybe he will.
It's every week. It's like he had another 40-yard touchdown. Like, oh shit.
He's got 22 touchdowns this year. So, but all right. The Senior Bowl invites, they're already coming out too. So it's like we're in full swing. We get to find out all that information as well. So it's an exciting time. But if you enjoyed our discussion this week, be sure to find us on Twitter at camp_dynasty and TikTok at camp.dynasty. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where video feeds of the pods go up every week. And like, rate, review, subscribe, share, follow, all of those fun things to the pod feed as well, because we very much appreciate that.
Rashad Bateman is back, baby.
That was a hell of a catch. Rashad Bateman, Hive, stand up. Thanks for stopping by Camp Dynasty this week, and we'll see you next week.